Hello everyone, and welcome to History of the Ancient World. Today, we're journeying back almost 4,000 years to the heart of Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization. We're going to explore one of the most significant legal documents ever created, the Code of Hammurabi. What was it? Why was it so important? And what can it teach us about life in ancient Babylon? Let's find out together. Imagine a world without written laws, where justice was arbitrary and depended on the whims of the powerful. That was the reality for many ancient societies. Then came Hammurabi, the sixth king of the first Babylonian dynasty, who reigned from around 1792 to 1750 BC. Hammurabi wasn't just a conqueror who united a vast empire. He was a visionary administrator who understood that to maintain control and ensure stability, he needed a unified system of law. So he commissioned the creation of a comprehensive legal code, a set of rules that would apply to everyone in his kingdom. This wasn't just a list of punishments, it was a sophisticated attempt to regulate society, covering everything from commerce and property to family law and professional conduct. The result was the Code of Hammurabi, famously inscribed on a massive stone monument, a stele for all to see. The most famous of these steles was discovered in 1901 by French archaeologists in Susa, modern-day Iran. It's a towering piece of black diorite, standing over 7 feet tall. At the very top, there's a fascinating carving. It depicts Hammurabi standing before Shamash, the Babylonian god of justice. Shamash is shown seated, handing Hammurabi the rod and ring, symbols of divine authority and law. This imagery sent a powerful message. These laws were not just the king's ideas, they were divinely ordained, sacred and unchangeable. This gave the code immense authority. Below this image, the text begins. It's written in Akkadian, using the cuneiform script, the wedge-shaped writing of ancient Mesopotamia. The code consists of a prologue, 282 laws, and an epilogue. The prologue glorifies Hammurabi, detailing his divine appointment to bring justice to the land, to destroy the wicked and the evil, so that the strong might not harm the weak. It sets a high moral tone for the laws that follow. Now, let's get into the laws themselves. They are famously specific and are often cited for their eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth principle, known as lex talionis, or the law of retaliation. For example, Law 196 states, "If a man put out the eye of another man, his eye shall be put out." Law 200 says, "If a man knock out the teeth of his equal, his teeth shall be knocked out." This sounds harsh to our modern ears, but at the time, it was a major step forward. It limited retribution. Instead of a family feud escalating into endless cycles of violence, the punishment was meant to fit the crime precisely, preventing excessive vengeance. However, the eye for an eye principle didn't apply equally to everyone. Babylonian society was strictly stratified, divided into classes. There were the Awilim, the upper class of nobles and property owners, the Mushkenum, a class of commoners or free people of lower status, and the Wardum, or slaves. The punishment you received often depended on your social status and the status of your victim. For instance, if a noble injured a commoner, the penalty was often a simple fine, but if a commoner injured a noble, the physical punishment would be severe. If a noble blinded a slave, he only had to pay half the slave's value to the owner. This tells us a lot about the social hierarchy and the values of Babylonian society. Justice was not blind, it was deeply intertwined with social class. The code covers an astonishing range of daily life. There are laws about agriculture. What happens if a farmer's negligence causes a flood that ruins his neighbor's crops? He would have to compensate the neighbor for the lost grain. There are laws about business transactions, setting interest rates for loans and establishing contracts for trade. For example, if a merchant lent grain to a farmer, the interest rate was capped to prevent exploitation. This shows a sophisticated understanding of economics and a desire to maintain a fair marketplace. Family law also features prominently. The code details rules for marriage, divorce, inheritance, and adoption. Marriages were essentially contracts, complete with dowries from the bride's family and bridal gifts from the groom. A man could divorce his wife, but he might have to return her dowry and provide for her and their children. A woman could also initiate a divorce if her husband was cruel or neglectful. The code aimed to protect women and children to some extent, ensuring they weren't left destitute. For example, a widow was entitled to her husband's property until her death. Professional standards were also strictly regulated. If a builder constructed a house that collapsed and killed the owner, the builder himself would be put to death. If it killed the owner's son, the builder's son would be put to death. This is another chilling example of the law of retaliation. Similarly, physicians faced severe penalties for failed surgeries on members of the upper class. These laws, while severe, were meant to ensure high standards of workmanship and accountability. You had to be very careful and competent in your profession. So, was the Code of Hammurabi a law code in the modern sense? Historians still debate this. Some argue it was more of a collection of legal precedents or a royal monument intended to portray Hammurabi as a just and wise king, rather than a practical statute book for everyday use by judges. After all, having one stone stele in a capital city wasn't very practical for an entire empire. However, copies of the laws have been found on clay tablets across Mesopotamia, suggesting they were studied and referenced. Whether it was a literal code of law or a piece of royal propaganda, its influence was immense. It established the principle that law should be written, public, and applied by a state authority. It laid the foundation for future legal systems, not just in Mesopotamia, but across the ancient world. The epilogue of the code is just as significant as the prologue. In it, Hammurabi once again presents himself as a shepherd to his people, a king of justice. He calls upon future kings to uphold his laws and blesses those who do, while placing a series of terrifying curses upon any ruler who would dare to alter or ignore his code. He writes, "Let any oppressed man who has a cause come into the presence of my statue as king of justice, and let him have my inscribed stele read out, and let him hear my precious words, that my stele may make the case clear to him." This was a revolutionary idea, that any person, regardless of their status, could seek and understand the law. The Code of Hammurabi provides an unparalleled window into an ancient civilization. It shows us a society that was complex, organized, and deeply concerned with order and justice, even if their concept of justice was very different from our own. It reflects their values, their social structure, their economic concerns, and their daily struggles. It's a testament to the human drive to create order out of chaos, to establish rules for living together in a complex society. While many of its punishments are brutal by today's standards, the code's underlying principles, that law should be public, that leaders are responsible for justice, and that there should be some standard for resolving disputes, are ideas that have echoed through millennia. It's a crucial link in the long chain of legal history that leads all the way to the legal systems we live under today. It's a powerful reminder that the quest for justice is as old as civilization itself. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back to ancient Babylon. I hope you found this exploration of Hammurabi's code as fascinating as I do. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to History of the Ancient World for more deep dives into our shared past. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next adventure. See you in the next video.